What's up everybody, iDusk here, and I hope you are having a happy Friday. Today I got another Gears of War 4 tips and tricks video. This time I'm going to go over some tips and tricks for racking up kills and winning more battles. Last time I talked about being a good support player, techniques and all that stuff, and at the start of this King of the Hill gameplay you're watching, you're actually going to see a really good example of what a good support player can do. But I do play more for kills throughout this match, which isn't how I normally play. I'm normally more support and objective minded, but I wanted to get a gameplay with a lot of battles to illustrate some of the things I'll be talking about in this video. So let's get started. I'm going to first give a general tip that will help you rack up more kills in any game type, and that is securing power weapons. You'll see in this gameplay I'm constantly on the TACCOM looking for respawn and power weapons, and this is because the player who controls the most power weapons is going to be the player with the most kills. And I'm not just talking about the main power weapons either, like the sniper and boom shot, torque bow, all that. You know, the grenades, the retro lancers, the Markskas, overkills, shock grenades, these are all really good weapons that are very overlooked in matchmaking, but are almost always available on the map to pick up. If you didn't know this, the TACCOM actually lets you know when power weapons have respawned or not. If the weapon's filled in on the TACCOM, that means that it's respawned and it's ready to be picked up, and if the weapon's transparent, that means that it is still respawning. This is really useful, so make sure you make it a habit to check those power weapons. My next tip is more of a mindset that I have while I'm playing Gears of War. Whenever you're in a battle, whether it be a 1v1 or a 2v1 or whatever the case may be, I like to think that in each and every battle I'm in, I have two goals in mind: get the kill or stay alive. You don't have to just focus on getting the kill. Sometimes backing away from a fight is the right move to make. The reason why I say this is because many people will be in a battle and then they'll find themselves in a situation that they realistically aren't going to win, and they don't really take into consideration that staying alive might be an option, and instead they'll just try to clutch while they're one snub pistol shot away from going down. I'm actually going to fast forward the gameplay real quick to show you a really good example that happened later in this game. Here you can see that I went down, but I was able to revive myself right in the middle of a shotgun battle. I missed those first two shots, which were the last of my clip, and I immediately ran away from the battle so I can get my reload off, get my health back, and kind of get my mind back in it so I don't keep missing these shots. But that quick 5-second break made a huge difference because I ended putting myself in a much better situation that ended in 2 kills, which wouldn't have happened if I decided to just try to reload my Gnasher in the middle of a fight. In that scenario, I chose to stay alive over getting the kill, and that actually ended up working out a lot better. Tip number 3 is to know when to hip fire, when to pop shot, and hard aim. I've sort of talked about this in my Gnasher tips and tricks video, but I didn't really get to go into too much detail, so I'm going to touch on it here. First, let me talk about hip firing. Hip firing is really useful when you're in the super close quarters. A lot of people don't know this, but your spread is actually wider when you hip fire compared to when you aim down the sights. This makes less of your shots connect at a distance, so hip firing is something I really only use when I'm trying to get a one-shot kill from super close range, or if my opponent's already weakened and I don't need to have all my pellets connecting. Pop shotting is really useful when you're having a battle outside the one-shot kill range, and it's also good because you can take your shot and then take cover, so with good timing you can dodge your opponent's shots and you can only expose yourself for a short time while you're getting your shot off. And of course, hard aiming is something that I don't do often, but I think is really useful when your opponent puts themselves in a bad situation, like if they rolled instead of sliding into cover, or if they jam a reload and they're in an open area. The core Gnasher is super powerful, and you'd be surprised how far you can get it down if every pellet connects. So if your opponent does something that gives you the opportunity to take that few seconds to aim for the hard aim, it's not a bad idea to just do that. Next tip is knowing when to keep your distance or to push in for the kill. This is something that a lot of players don't really actively think about during shotgun fights, but it does make a huge difference. The shotgun is capable of getting a one-shot kill from a very close range, so that means that even if you got the first shot off and your opponent is 4-point, if you two are fighting in the very close quarters, you're essentially negating that advantage that you had. You're both just one shot away from death. Then your opponent just has an even shot at winning that fight. This is why it's super important to be mindful of the distance between you and your opponent and then adjust it accordingly. So let's say, for example, if you land the first shot on somebody, you got them about 3 or 4 point and you haven't taken damage yet, you want to try to keep your distance because you have that big advantage over your opponent and you don't want to risk getting one shot killed if it's not necessary. On the flip side, if you've been hit first and you're one shot away from death and you don't feel like backing down is an option, you want to try to close the gap between you and your opponent because 1, you don't have anything to lose, and 2, because you stand a much better chance landing off one good shot than you do landing 2 or 3 shots at a distance. So you want to make sure that one shot is close enough to be a kill. It's important to be aware of the distance between you and your opponent so that you don't lose a shotgun battle when you had the first shot advantage. Tip number 5 is to recognize which player you're fighting and adjust your playstyle accordingly. What I mean by that is if you're in a game, you should try to be aware of which character each player on the enemy team plays and sort of gauge how good of a player they are or what their playstyle is like. For example, let's say one of them's on a guest account and is on the bottom of the scoreboard, 0 kills, 0 points, and you know that player is playing Marcus and they're obviously the weak link of the team. You can take him on easily in any situation, even if it's not an ideal situation for you. Now that's very valuable information, because now if you encounter that same player and you recognize them, you know you can take that 1v1 no problem, even if they have right hand advantage or something like a power weapon or anything like that. Or another example, let's say you know one player on the enemy team plays super aggressively. They're constantly in your face, rushing with the Nasher, and you recognize that player during a match. Now you can predict that he's going to charge at you, and you can use that against them by anticipating the push, going for the hard aim. You know, sitting back and waiting for a hard aim or pushing a 1v1 when someone has right hand advantage, those generally aren't good ideas, but depending on which specific player you're playing against, it could work out. Another example, just for a third one, let's say you're in a 1v1 sniper battle and the guy on the other team has like 40 headshots. You know he's an absolute beast with the sniper, so you might not want to take that, you might want to think twice about taking that battle if you aren't equally skilled in the sniper department. The point is, how you should approach a battle can vary depending on who you are fighting. What might not be a good situation generally could end up working out for you if you're playing against a specific player, so trying to keep tabs on how the other team plays is important. This can get pretty tricky if all the players are using the same characters or similar characters, so another way you can do this is by marking enemies. When you mark someone, you can see their gamer tag, so even if everybody on the other team is using the same skin, you can still tell them apart from each other. Tip number 6 is a really quick one: active reloads. Having an active reload has always been super important in Gears of War, and this game is certainly no different. Before you jump into a battle, you should always try to have an active reload if you have the time to do so. It's also important to be consciously aware of when you're doing an active reload and not just doing it out of habit, because in this game there's actually a cooldown for the active reload, so you don't want to waste an active if you aren't going to put it to good use. Finally, tip number 7 is to master the art of wall bouncing. This is something that I can and probably will make an entire tips and tricks video for, because so much just goes into the movement and the wall bouncing in this game, but there are plenty of YouTube guides on this topic already, and I will actually recommend to anyone looking to improve their wall bouncing to check out Dutchy Live's channel. I'll have a link in the description. He has an amazing movement tutorial series of videos, so definitely check those out, but I will probably have my own tips and tricks video on this subject at some point in the future. But wall bouncing is super important. It's not just about dodging shots or looking like an MLG pro. You know, wall bouncing, it helps you move around the map more fluidly. It can actually make you move around the map a little bit faster if you get really good at it. It can help you close or create a gap between you and your opponent in the blink of an eye. And you can get yourself out of even the worst situations if you have solid movement. So there you have it, guys, just a couple quick tips and tricks for winning more battles. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope this guy helps some of the newer players out there. If you have any of your own personal tips and tricks that I didn't cover, and you just want to suggest an idea for a future video, please be sure to let me know in the comments below. This channel has actually been growing a lot faster lately, and I'm super hyped for that, but I'm also getting a lot more comments on my videos, which is, again, super awesome, but I'm still going to try to do my best to respond to each and every comment as long as I can handle it, but I do read them all, so please feel free to drop me a comment if you want to suggest an idea for a future episode, or just, you know, leave a tips and tricks of your own in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate every single one of you, and I will see you guys next time.